Peter Mahoney here. Singer is by video. I will be appointing Ted Luxinger as a full member for tonight, and we do have a quorum. Okay, gotta count, sure. There are Wetlands agency meeting minutes from December 6th, 2023, and 2 site walk meeting minutes, December 17th, 2023, and December 26th, 2023. Do any commissioners have any questions or corrections or anything that needs to be addressed regarding those meeting minutes? Okay, would anybody put a motion forward to accept those meeting minutes?
For minutes.
And Ted up on the screen seconds that. All in favor? Aye. I think that's unanimous. Okay. Moving on. Roman numeral 4, public hearing. Number 1, it's continued. Map amendment application, Graceland. 113 Twin Lanes Road, map 158, parcel 31. It's must to amend town map I-4 to reflect ground conditions. The decision may be made if the hearing is completed, or the hearing may be continued. The original 35-day public hearing time frame to complete ends January 10th, 2024. 65-day time extension may be provided by the applicant to further public hearing continuations to February 7th, 2024. If the hearing is completed, the agency shall take a decision within 65 days. Staff recommends approval of the map amendment. It's my recollection, we closed the public hearing on this, and we're just now
I think that's right.
talking and if you want on voting. And if you'd like to recollect, your recollection, it's in the meeting minutes, a short little thing. And Commissioner Fain is your neighbor. I think, right?
Well, no, we already did that one.
We didn't vote on it.
No, not on the church.
We left, we didn't vote.
No, we had it,
Yeah.
we had it afterwards.
That one voted. This is the
This is
Twin
different
Lanes.
Property, it's Twin
At
Lane.
the end, at the end of the minutes. I think it was
Oh, yeah, we
during other.
at the end.
Oh. Yeah, we did
That one, this is a different one.
It's a different one. I apologize for that. But then somebody's gonna,
You're the same night.
you were both on the same night?
Yeah.
That's my confusion. I apologize. So this one is 113 Twin Lanes Road, that one. Okay. Anybody here for that?
I don't see Mr. or Mrs. Grace in the audience or online.
I guess we can pass it for now.
I think it could be discussed, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We can discuss it then. Any commissioners, any questions? Any questions on it or motions?
The only observation I wanted to make, and I don't know how to handle this. These are the culvert to the next door neighbor's property. So it's drainage that comes across, not the Grayson property, the other property. We're just discussing the Grayson property, but that's both.
61 and 113.
So I think that somewhere in the flag, the bylaw should be flagged that there's existing drainage that goes across the property and under a culvert over there, just so that it's aware, everybody's aware of that in case there's an activity, well, future it doesn't interrupt the drainage.
Agreed.
Is
That
that
was documented in the memo.
Did you speak up? Are we supposed to be here for this? No? No.
this, this the one where you wanted to also reduce the area?
Correct.
So is that something where a map would be produced that to reflect that?
Yes.
And it,
Reduction in the existing.
we doing that, is that something with Commissioner Fain's question about a type or culvert? Is that?
I think we agreed
Yeah.
on the area.
Okay.
And what's reflected in.
Okay.
in my memo.
Do you guys have any
Everyone's-
questions about that?
Yeah.
I had a quick question, Jay. Like you went out and you were able, because your expertise, to use that hand auger. Like, is that something that like if we had something that was difficult that you could come out and do with us? Or is that something that you did specifically just on this one?
I'm using my own expertise. It's a little bit dicey for me. I can't testify as an expert.
Right.
So like if you came out,
I-
we still couldn't discuss it. You would have, it'd only be your knowledge then.
It's my knowledge, right?
Okay.
And then you have to rely on the knowledge of, I have to rely on my knowledge, you have to rely on the knowledge of the
That's what I was just checking. Okay.
Any, Ed, anything from you, or not, any motions or anything to approve or deny?
I'll make a motion to approve the conditions of some recommendations provided by the Bishop.
By the staff, okay. Any second, Daphne seconds? All in favor? Aye, and heads as well, all around. Okay. Sorry for the confusion there. Let's go to number 2, WP 23-153, Livingston Mead, 875 Mill Hill Road, parcel 228, map 228, parcel 95. Construction of a pool, patio, drainage improvements, and fencing within a regulated area. Decision may be made, the hearing is completed, or the hearing is continued. The original 35-day public hearing timeframe to complete the hearing ends February 7th, 2024. So the public hearing may be continued to February 7th, 2024 meeting. A 65-day time extension may be provided by the applicant. So the public hearings continuations are possible. If the hearing is completed, the agent will make a decision within 65 days. I have multiple things here. One is the applicant expressed a fee waiver, but while it's not on the agenda, we also have a intervenor motion. I believe I need to take up the intervenor motion first.
Grant it. You mean to grant the intervention?
To discuss it. I'm not sure if they're a proper party to intervene. I need to see what it is, who they are, have a few minutes on them, and then I'll let the applicants move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, in connection with that, I'm Kevin Gumper. I'm an attorney. I'm here on behalf of Anne Marie Farrington and Craig Schultz, who are the interveners. You do have their petition to intervene dated, I think.
Yes, right.
And, any questions about it, I'd be happy to discuss it with you.
Okay. Commissioners, does anybody have any questions regarding it? One of the questions I have, they're not budding owners, are they? Does their property abut on the 875 Mill Hill Road?
They do not abut, but they're very close.
Are they? Yes.
Mine's does, mine's a bun. I want to be whatever part of.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No.
Who are you, ma'am? What's your name?
I'm the neighbor of this, whatever.
Ms. Helen Hayes, and she also has retained Kevin Gumper with us. The reason we're part of this is because we have a very large pond in our backyard that is,
Both on the same property? So, counsel? Are you going to be speaking on behalf of your clients, or will they be doing their own presentation? Okay.
Ms. Hayes lives next door
Next door to,
to the property.
so she's in a bus.
Number I'm getting lost.
I know,
What number?
849.
649.
And is that in a budding park?
That is abuts.
Okay. All right.
Farrington and Schultz live at 100 Water.
Gotcha.
Not a bus, but it's very close. They are next door to the property that's directly behind subject property.
Okay.
And they have a pond that is fed by water that comes off of subject property. And They don't have to be in a butter to be an intervener. That's why they've intervened. So it wouldn't be a question of whether they join. Sure. As citizens generally fill out the intervene, they make a verified petition that can be verified, and as long as it specifies, paying attention to the map.
Yeah, that's more.
And you see the pond,
Use that as an exhibit to fill with the property, so. We can take 49 here.
This is the pond here.
Barrington. This is subject property, that's Mills Hill Road.
Okay.
We saw it.
Our house.
It's like,
It's directly.
Yeah, close. Okay. And you, 849, there was this is A, then Mr. Yes.
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 Okay. And then so they each have a portion of the pond. Yes. Okay, very good. Okay. Commissioners, any questions or any concerns about these parties being brought in as interveners?
Other,
A motion to allow the parties to come in or to accept the intervener status?
I just, quick question on procedure. I think it's on the file, they were interveners, is that correct?
it has to be approved, although they do have to specify something for you to understand that they have to make specific allegations. So you can decide that what they're complaining about, is something you have jurisdiction about.
Well, so the interveners gives them a standing in terms of being involved in the application, going to meetings.
Yeah, provided
They have the,
it. The rule is you can't come and be intervener for an environmental thing in a probate matter. It's gonna have to be something that you have something involved with.
Right.
And they clearly, I think if you read it, goes on for 5 pages, they're very specific.
No problem.
okay.
This one's.
I don't have an issue with it either. So.
Motion?
I think so.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept it.
Anybody second? Second. All in favor? Aye, it's all around. Okay, so you guys are interveners. Thank you. That was just one small aspect of it.
Just one tiny bit.
Yep. And now we're gonna open the hearing. The applicant will present and then we'll go.
You know that as an intervener, I get to ask questions of the witness. This chair.
Would you want to sit next to me?
I just found that out. Right, so I guess we can have a.
Sit next.
Sit
next to the.
I don't think so.
Yes, do we do the fee waiver before the public hearing?
Yeah.
We don't have to, we can do it later?
Later.
Okay. I prefer to do that. Motion to open the public hearing? Second, anybody? Gabby? Okay. Okay, Gabby, all in favor to open the public hearing? Yes, all around. Council,
Chairman,
welcome.
members of the agency, good evening. For the record, my name is Kevin Fallon. I'm pleased to be here tonight representing Matt and Michelle Hudson, who are seated right back there in the corner. Obviously, we're going to make, as the chair indicates, our presentation. We recognize the intervention that has been duly filed in accordance with the statute. We'll reserve our right to make any rebuttal comments or provide any witnesses with regard to the specific allegations that are made in the intervention. As you know, the interveners have the burden of proof with respect to those allegations, and ultimately you'll make 2 decisions in this particular matter. As you know, you'll make a decision on the intervention and whether or not the interveners have met their burden of proof, which I'll elaborate on at the appropriate time. And then you'll make a determination on the inland wetlands permit application that's before you tonight. Addressing those comments to that aspect of the matter, we're here basically with a simple application. It's to construct a new pool, hot tub, and patio with perimeter fencing, and importantly, make certain drainage improvements, and in the process of doing all that, install mitigative planting. Pools are nothing unique to this neighborhood. If you go on Google, as I did this afternoon, I maybe unscientifically counted 18 pools in the specific general area we're talking about. That certainly includes a pool at the intervener's property at 100 Waterville, which is an 817 square foot pool. And it also includes another pool at 849 Mill Hill Road, which is approximately 800 square feet. The pool we seek your approval of is 576 square feet. There was a previous application that was filed, application 22-169. I was not counsel on that application. My understanding is that it sought approval of similar improvements, but taking a quite different approach, as we'll elaborate on tonight. It was withdrawn prior to decision by the agency. Whereas the goals or the basic goals of the two plans, the one that was withdrawn and the one that's in front of you tonight, are similar, and that's to permit the construction of a pool in the rear yard and to improve drainage conditions of the property. As you'll hear from our experts tonight, the means used to accomplish these goals has been significantly modified. And the new plan submitted herewith has been modified in response to comments that were received during the course of the original application from staff, from the commission, and from members of the public. The result, we hope you will agree, is a plan that's been carefully designed to offer a positive net benefit to the functions and values of the wetlands of the site, which is obviously your jurisdiction and the thing that you are here to ensure. My colleague Craig Flaherty of Redness and Mead will review the specific improvements with regard to the prior plan, the alternate plan, and what we propose in this plan tonight. I don't think it can be overemphasized that the Hudsons in this application are attempting to accomplish two simple but very, very important goals. One is to provide a small outdoor area, including the pool, for their enjoyment and that of their children, their young family. And the second, which cannot be overstated, is to address the very significant drainage concern that have impacted their property since they purchased it in 2019 and well before then, that has rendered at many times of the year totally unusable large portions, if not the entirety of that backyard, as well as negatively, as you'll hear in our presentation, impacting environmental conditions. So our presentation tonight, as I said, consists of Craig Flaherty of Redness and Mead. I believe he is well known to the commission, to the agency. He'll elaborate on his qualifications as part of his presentation. He'll discuss with you the existing conditions that are at site, proposed conditions being what we are proposing, also the proposed regulated activities, and also review what we propose by way of mitigation, although as you'll hear in the course of our presentation from Craig and Mr. Kenny, we really don't think there are any impacts here. There are no impacts here associated with what we propose that would necessitate as a legal matter pursuant to the statute mitigation, but yet mitigation is being accomplished here. And what that mitigation involves, and you'll hear in detail, is significant enhancements to stormwater quality and reductions in the rate and volume of stormwater runoff to the westerly property line. Bill Kenny will be our second expert. He again, I think, is well known to the agency and will obviously address his credentials as well. The essence of Bill's findings and testimony will be that there are no adverse impacts associated with the proposed activities to wetlands and water courses, and that in fact there are enhancements and improvements to the wetlands functions which will benefit environmental considerations. He also will discuss with you his mitigative planting plan, which is part of our proposal. So before I elaborate further in terms of doing the criteria for the decision, you need to hear the facts. You need to hear the evidence. And to start with that, I would call on Craig Flaherty to present our proposal. Mr. Flaherty.
Good evening. My name is Craig Flaherty. I'm a principal and senior engineer with Redness and Mead, a land use consulting company with our primary office in Stanford. I've been a practicing professional engineer in the state of Connecticut for over 25 years, specializing in hydrology and hydraulics. Sat myself on a wetlands agency for 7 years, so I'm familiar with the balance we've been making that you all are tasked with. But I'll just get going with the orientation. I'm happy to put this easel anywhere. I was told somewhere in this vicinity was a good spot because it was picked up on the camera. So maybe I'll do that. I don't know. Can you still see it right here? So this is a copy of the, well, I guess orientation up here is the Google aerial on the right. There was an orientation with the narrative. The big red dot, of course, is 875 Mill Hill Road on the west side of Mill Hill. North is up. Look south of its intersection with, is it Warner right here? To the rear of 875 Mill Hill Road is 975 Mill Hill Road, the Warlock property, which is the abutting neighbor on the west side of the site. This, I believe, is 849, which is the abutting neighbor on the south side of the site. And then the intervener's property is here, 100 Waterville Road. That's the pond cited in the petition. And that's about 60 feet separate from our property to their property. That's your general orientation. This is specifically the existing conditions property topographic survey provided with the application. Property is about 0.69 acres in size. It is developed as a residential suburban property. It is largely residential suburban landscape throughout the property. There is a looped drive in the front between the house and Mill Hill Road. There is the house here, which consists of a primary residence and an auxiliary apartment over the garage. And there's a deck and the backyard. So wetland soils were identified in the backyard and are presented on the survey, which I've sketched with this slight red line here. And in the backyard here is the area that ponds from time to time when we have above average rainfall like we did in December. Off-site here is also a feature which is presented by the topography and the spot elevations on the topographic survey, which is a landscape berm on 975 Mill Hill Road that has increased in elevation over time, making this ponding and wet weather events worse and worse. Other thing to note is the basement sump pump discharges in this location right here. I think that's a pretty good orientation as to existing conditions. What we also included, in addition to the soils report for our property in the application, we of course included a copy of your wetland map with our property highlighted. So you could see that on adjacent downstream properties, there are regulated areas and wetlands that are present, although the presence of these regulated areas does not change the regulated area on this property, which you'll see delineated on the site plan when I bring it up. But basically, if we take the 100-foot wetland setback off of this line, it's almost the entire property except for the northeast corner. So I'm going to use, we didn't, of course, include in the application narrative pictures of the site. So if you're following along, I would follow along with the application narrative, which has a lot of these attachments right to it. And these are the pictures that are included in that application narrative. So we gave you pictures in both side yards and the rear yard. Our surveyors came out in July to do the survey. So dry that day when they took the pictures, and those are the pictures we used. But of course, we all know that that area in the backyard ponds and is quite wet when we have above rainfall. For example, in December, we had over 8 inches of rain according to the National Weather Service station in Bridgeport, when normally you get about 4 inches of rain. So that would present right about here in this image, looking into the backyard towards 975. This is a picture looking towards 100 Waterville Road and the pond in the distance. This is a picture that shows the presence of that landscape berm just over the wall on 975. And this and this are pretty good pictures of where the pool is proposed, which I'll show you. So water on the subject property, the ground slopes from high on the roadside to a low at the back. So it slopes from east to west. And that's part of the area topography. So this is, again, these are both topographic images from town information. This is 1968 information on town topo that was included with a narrative. This is more recent, I think, 2016 topographic information from your GIS system that was included with a narrative. You can see the pond on both. And as described in our narrative, portions are all of about 5 properties, including 849, 875, 907, 975, and 100 Waterville, are tributary to that pond, and that includes our property. This also shows the general lay of the land for many decades was water running from east to west towards that pond. Of course, that's been more recently obstructed by the landscaping that has gained in height and is obstructing more water on the subject property. Use Bill Kenny's plan because it's nice and pretty. Color helps explain things. So this is just a blow up of his mitigation planting plan. This is what his full plan looks like. Of course, submitted with the application, so I just took that upper left and doubled the size of it here. So again, we see Mill Hill Road on the right, the driveway, the home, and the backyard. But what is now introduced on this plan are the proposed features we're here to talk to you about. And so the easy thing to spot, of course, is the proposed pool. Attorney Fallon had mentioned that there was a previous application considered by the agency last year, which was withdrawn before decision. We modified things a lot from that plan. That plan sought place fill in most of the backyard, including on top of the wetlands. It proposed to include a rain garden within the wetlands and an underground reservoir within the wetlands. All that has been moved and pulled back. So what we did with the pool here, we rotated it, pushed it up against the north zoning setback and pushed it as close to the house as we could, and actually reduced it in size from 800 square feet to less than 600 square feet. So we're really just from the get-go trying to lessen the disturbance on the property and lessen the impact on the property. So this is the location of the pool. The surround is less than 3 feet or less. There's a small retaining on the north and east side just to hold back grade here and create a flat surface to build the pool. This is the location of the proposed hot tub within a small terrace area that's less than 200 square feet in size. So it turns out, if we follow these rules, followed intentionally, the town of Fairfield Engineering Department does not require a detention system. And the thinking is that water that falls in the pool doesn't run off, it accumulates in the pool if it's a conventional pool, not a mirror edge pool, right? If it's a conventional pool, which is what we're proposing, there's about 6 inches of room for rain to fall in the pool. And so that offsets the minor increases in impervious surfaces in that surround. That being said, we didn't necessarily think that that was the right thing to do. There is a drainage problem out here, one that we wish to improve both for our clients, but we wish to improve for downstream neighbors and adjacent neighbors as well. So we are proposing a detention system, which is indicated in the backyard here. That's outside of the wetlands. We did soil testing in the field, tests and deep pit tests, observe the soil profile, make sure that this system would function. So we've got the bottom of the system above observed restrictive layers, and we have the percolation tests to feel comfortable that the soil is adequate to accept the runoff that will be made tributary to this infiltration system. That does require a bit of fill to be placed around it so that the bottom of it can stay above that restrictive layer so that it will function. And so that's the nature of the fill you see in this side of the yard. But in total, we reduced the amount of fill from the last application by something like, right here, something like 90%. So the net fill is about 28 cubic yards. And again, that's largely in the backyard areas here. So the proposal is to take the roof leader, roof leaders and gutters from the front half of the house from about here to about here, collect them in a pipe and convey that water to this infiltration system. And that's about 1,100 square feet of roof area that we would propose to make tributary to this infiltration system. And this is the good thing about it. On all of these properties, I doubt there's very much in the way of stormwater mitigation, right? It went from woodland to pasture to health. So whenever we have applications like this, at least what I try to do is to accomplish the basic objectives of the applicant and owner, but do so in a way that actually improves conditions. So at the end of the day, I'm confident that conditions are going to be better, in this case from a drainage perspective, than they are today. So instead of rainwater hitting impervious surfaces and not soaking into the ground and having that rainwater run off, albeit over landscaped areas, which is good, we're trying to create a location where we can get some groundwater recharge, right? Groundwater recharge is good for wetland and watercourse systems overall. So instead of flashy and warm runoff that you get in rainfall events, you're introducing water into the ground that can now slowly find its way to an expression at nearby wetlands or downstream wetlands and watercourses. This helps extend the hydro period, which makes for healthier downstream wetlands and watercourses, right? The longer it takes for water to get there, the more those wetlands and watercourse systems will stay, for lack of a better term, moisturized even in dry conditions, because now it's going through the ground to get there and taking time to do so. Now, look, we're not solving all the ills of the world. This is still a suburban landscape. But if you're asking me which way we're moving the needle, we are moving the needle in a positive direction. We're trying to unwind the clock here a little bit with the installation of this infiltration system. And so by capturing the impervious surfaces up here into this infiltration system that we know will function, we are actually, again, encouraging that groundwater recharge. So instead of that same water surface running off the property, now a portion of that water is going to be soaking into the ground. It will all eventually express downstream. But the result of this, when we do our analysis of storm events, right, the peak rate of runoff in our big flooding events, is that we've actually reduced the rate and quantity, volume of runoff reaching this western property boundary. And again, we think that's a good thing. I mean, with the increase in rainfall that we are experiencing, this is what we do on every application. We really seek to introduce drainage systems that reduce the peak rate of runoff and reduce the volume associated with those rainstorms. And that's what we're doing here. And the last item of note, well, I should point out the fences. We'll have a perimeter, just fence at the property boundary, and then a pool enclosure fence immediately surrounding the pool. That sump pump discharge, which I had mentioned, which currently discharges at this location here, will be extended to discharge at this location in the southwest corner of the property. And the evidence provided with the application shows that in previous years, an easement was created with 975 Mill Hill. So I suppose if we were acting under that easement, we could actually extend this onto that property. There's no need to do so. As long as we get to the other side of the wall, we can stay on our property. But it's certainly an area where in the past, the two property owners agreed that it was a good place for a sump pump discharge. And we'll have a splash pad there with riprap to make sure there's no erosion. I saw in Mr. Bishop's staff report about the sump pump discharges for about 5 seconds every couple of minutes. So based on the pump curves, and that's, again, that's right now. There are times it does not operate and it's drier and water levels are lower. But right now it's operating where it's discharged for about 5 seconds every 2 minutes. Based on the pump curves, that's about 4 or 5 gallons for that 5 seconds. So it's something in the range of 2 to 2.5 gallons per minute. So you did a pretty good job estimating. A little lower than you said in your staff report. It's about 2 to 2.5 gallons per minute on an average basis at the moment. And I think, 8 inches of rain in December, we can agree this is kind of a peak time, and most of the time it's going to be less than that. But when you're looking at stormwater runoff numbers, right, we talk in cubic feet per second, not gallons per minute. And cubic feet per second, it's less than 0.01 cubic feet per second. I think it's 0.006 cubic feet per second. Forgive me for talking like an engineer. I'm an engineer, but that's, almost a rounding error as compared to rainfall numbers that we were typically designing these sites for. As I pointed out, we shifted the pool, put it closer to the house. We've got the stormwater mitigation system, which theoretically is not required, but we got that entirely outside of the wetland system. We've significantly reduced the amount of fill proposed, almost entirely outside of the wetland limits, and really just to create the flat level area for the pool and a slight fill pocket, like you might see for a septic system, filtration area. Disturbance, we listed in our application about 1,300 square feet of total disturbance in the wetland, but we included everything where dirt might get turned over. So for example, this pipe run, the trenching necessary for that, we included that, even though at the end of the day, that's covered over and reseeded just as it is today. Everything in the wetlands, in fact, will be restored to a landscape vegetated condition so that disturbance is temporary.
How much actual filling are you doing in the wetlands though?
Not a lot. So there's basically we wanted to feather the slope from this fill pocket down into the wetland. So I think this is the wetland limit right here. This represents where we have more than 12 inches of fill, and that's less than 12 inches of fill. So it might be 7 or 8 feet over at its max point.
That's the square footage number?
Yeah, Bill has his, on his plan, he notes this area that's in that crosshatch is 200 square feet.
Are there any alternatives that would eliminate that?
Yeah, we talked about walls. I really don't want to introduce, so it's about, let's really wind up with the position of this, right? We have the soil testing here. We have to get this at a certain height. We used very narrow Cultex, the 12-inch Cultex. To keep that as low as possible, but still above that restrictive layer. And we, of course, want it, a comfortable distance away from the basement, right? So we're not just recirculating. I don't want to introduce a wall here. I don't want that immediately downstream of the infiltration system. I much rather prefer this feathered slope, and quite frankly, the disturbance necessary to build a wall. I think that's that's a lot. I'd rather just have this slight feathered slope. And this is also in the portion of the wetland that is uphill of any of the impounded areas, right? So this is in the transitional edge of the wetland as well.
Do you have an idea of the elevation? Right, the elevation.
Yeah, the grade above the infiltration system will be 147.5 on this edge, 147.5, and there'll be about
I see it. I see it.
and there'll be about a 2.5 foot
Gotcha.
slope. Yeah. And we included in the engineering plans, so these are the more technical documents. We have on the last page, we've given you the cross sections on sheet SE4 that clearly show what the pool is, what the limit is. This is the definition over here on the upper. So you have all that. Should the infiltration system need to overflow, introduce this area drain, which will act as kind of the overflow device. And downstream of that, we're proposing a stone line channel detail and photo, of which we, inspirational photo detail, what that might look like. It's also included. It's sheet SE3. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kenny to talk about the ecological environs. Very clearly in my mind, the introduction of this infiltration system is an improvement, both to general drainage conditions, but also to water quality and the health of the downstream system. Again, we're not solving all the ills of the world, but we are moving the needle in a positive direction in that. So, Bill?
I think before, I do have a couple of questions for you. You did a lot of calculations, I think dated over 2021, is that right?
I think the original drainage report is dated October 20th, 2023.
And you subsequently changed your, well, that involved, start over again. This property slopes from Hill Road substantially down towards to the west, right? It's like 14-foot drop from front line to back line.
I'll take your word for it. Yes, it slopes from east to west.
Yeah, and,
West property line is lower than east.
Right. And presently, there's no formal stormwater detention on the property.
That's correct.
So the rainwater just, sheet flow across to the back into the west. And currently, you have quite a bit of impervious driveway between the house and Mill Hill Road. And I think your original calculation, we're going to tie in the roof of the house and the driveway are most of them.
Right. The October 20th plans and report include an area drain at this location just off the front door, which would have collected a portion of the driveway as well, made tributary to this. That is still the current design. We've had some back and forth with the engineering department about eliminating that, and that's yet to be determined.
But right now, we don't know what it is that you're proposing to do because you're in between yourself and the engineering department. You have to decide what's going to be done. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it won't affect the nature of grading or the findings. I've actually done the calculations both ways already. We're still reducing peak rates. We're still reducing volumes in line with what we're showing in the October 20th report. But you're correct. We don't have a clean direction from the engineering department about which way they would like it.
And so you redid your calculations based on what the engineering department asked you to do, correct?
Yep.
And based on that, you submitted new calculations, and I think you submitted them yesterday. Is that right?
Yeah, we submitted one set on the 21st or 22nd of December, and then another email we submitted yesterday. That's correct.
Maybe the 27th of December. Yeah. Back and forth with Mr. Antonio.
No, we responded before break. I know that much. And so our response to his initial review was before Christmas. He responded over break. That might be the 27th to which you're referring. And then we responded on Monday or Tuesday. Monday was the holiday.
So the way this is supposed to work is at least the roof leaders and perhaps some of the driveway.
Correct.
You're going to take that water, you're going to put it into the Coltec, correct?
Correct.
And in the Coltec, it's going to fill up with water and then the water's just going to go down into the soil eventually, correct?
That's the idea.
If there's too much, it's going to discharge over in one concentrated point, correct? Rather than sheet flow across the entire property.
The overflow for the infiltration system is indicated in this location.
Correct. One outlet, correct?
That's correct.
And in your calculations, did you do any calculations with respect to the neighboring pond?
In terms of the amount of water flow
Yes.
Gets to the pond, no, other than looking at the general watershed, which is about 5 acres. And the portion that we might be collecting here, which is maybe 1,000 or 2,000 square feet. That's basically the only calculation that I would perform to.
1,000 or 2,000, I mean, the property is
Well, the amount that we're collecting here,
5,000 square feet, isn't it?
the amount that we would be collecting in the infiltration system would be about 1,000 square feet of roof and about 1,000 square feet of driveway, plus or minus, as compared to about 200,000 square feet that is tributary to the neighboring pond.
I was thinking that in your calculations, you thought it was like 3,169 or 3,690. Not 2,000.
Well, there's difference between the total land area and the encroachment. We should be talking apples to apples, not apples to oranges. So if you're talking total land area, I'll accept that it's 3,000 or 4,000 square feet. Yeah.
I'm just trying to go up. I think you said impervious was 3,000 is what you were collecting. That's what I thought. That's my recollection. And where does the sump pump discharge now? Can you show that? And where do you propose, to change the location?
I have a question about that.
Sure.
Is there an easement actually in place now that's?
Correct. The easement is current.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because I wasn't quite sure.
And the book and page and the map were provided.
Right.
Something for clarity. I'm standing on the street, looking at the house. Property generally slopes downward to my left towards the pond. So the water that we were just talking about is not going through the house. So I don't see where the water flow would be changed anyway. It's all going down.
It's the ground, yeah, so the water that would,
Just want to make sure that I don't.
that would fall on the driveway or the front yard finds its way effectively to this corner and out to the,
There really isn't any change.
there is no change. This water gets to the pond in existing conditions and proposed conditions, with a portion of it being taken out to support groundwater recharge.
We all did a walk, just, I mean, I don't want to talk out of place here, but we all did a walk. We have something like 40, I don't know what pictures we took. So we're all aware of the pump. It was discharging while we were there. You could always look at the pictures that we, a lot of detail.
Yeah.
The day we were there, at least 5 inches of.
Those pictures are part of the record.
Yeah.
Sure. So,
Yeah, now you feel the pain of our client.
I
Yes.
have a question about, just about the pool. Yes, in a traditional pool, you've got a good healthy 5-6 inches of room, but in the case of severe storm event, when the pool does overflow, is there a discharge for the overflow discharge for the pool on that?
In my mind, it would just fill over the brim. If we got 9 inches of rain, let's say, it would fill over the brim and go. Kind of part of the reason we thought, this is just a good idea anyway, right? Because there's always a bigger storm.
Council,
No more questions.
more questions? Okay. Commissioners.
Hold on, we're not quite done with our presentation.
Do you have any questions? We're all going to be here throughout the proceedings. Any questions further at this point from Mr. Flaherty?
Okay.
I do, I guess, as long as we're opening it up to questions, I just wanted to ask you, in your opinion, in your professional opinion, would there be any impact, increased stormwater flows down the property line, the western property line?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Guard, did you say increased water flow? Is that what your question was?
Thank you, Mr. Flaherty.
No.
We asked Mr. Kenny, who I think is well-known, to assess the impacts from an environmental standpoint associated with the proposed activities. And so I'll give you Mr. Kenny here.
I'm on. Well, there, Mr. Kenny, is that good? You're gonna show us stuff there?
Yep, so you did a nice job. Opposite side of that for the whole plan.
You want to leave that in white?
Good evening. I'm Bill Kenny, Principal of William Kenny Associates here in Fairfield. I'm a professional wetland scientist. That's degree environmental management from the U.S. environment. And I've been practicing about 30 years. What I'd like to do is go through with you some existing conditions, back up a little bit and get into more details about the existing conditions of the wetlands and the property and the watershed, and then go through the conditions and then review my conclusions with regard to potential impacts to the wetland. This property sits on the west side of a traditional glacial drumlin. That's pretty important with the drainage. There's a lot of questions about drainage and concerns about drainage, and that's very important. You have Mill Hill right here. It's a broad mound, cigar-shaped north-south long hill. These are common. You have Greenfield Hill, Sasko Hill. And these are common drumlin glacial deposits. What you typically have with those deposits is the first couple of feet is loose material, and then often you have a compacted sublayer. And so what happens when water falls on that, it hits that compacted layer and starts moving sideways through the soil. As it comes down the hill and more water's falling, that water starts to build up and eventually it breaks out. You end up with wetlands on the side of the hill. Often people are surprised to see that, but that's why you can get some of these hillside wetlands, seepage wetlands. And I believe before the house was built, before the road was put in, the road's been there for over 100 years. The house was built in the late 50s. That water used to flow through here. Most rain events, it went into the ground and flowed as subsurface water, and it broke out and created the wetland that you have on the property today. And then with the introduction of the road is a pretty traditional road with regard to drainage. It has a crown, so water comes down, it hits that road, and unless it's a really large storm, most of the water then travels south on the road. So areas of the land that used to pitch into here, a lot of that no longer pitches into there. So that affected the wetland. The wetland's not getting as much water as it did 100 years ago or so. And then the house was built in 1957, and that essentially took other water and moved it around the house. And so now the water comes here and it goes around the house. And that also affected the hydrology and the conditions of the wetlands. So some areas of the wetland remained wet and or perhaps even got wetter, and other areas dried. And you end up with what I want to say, two different types of, two different classes of wetland. You have what is a classic depression. That's on the west side here. It's a shallow depression that holds water. And then you have on the east side, you have the slope. So the depression remains pretty wet, particularly because of the berm that has grown off site there, the soil berm, the low berm that holds back some more water. But the upper slope of that area is much drier than it has been. And combine that with the fact that the area has been maintained primarily as a suburban yard, as a lawn for many, many decades. There's significant portions of the wetland that are really not providing the typical functions that you find in a wetland. There's an absence of groundwater discharge that used to feed this wetlands, particularly directly behind the house. The lawn doesn't provide much habitat, provides some. It's better than a parking lot, but it doesn't have native ground cover, shrubs and trees and things like that to help with an abundance or diversity of native flora, and that impacts the native fauna. And then other things that physically, because of the depression, it still provides some floodwater detention and some water quality benefits. Although when you throw in the fact that it's maintained as lawn, it in itself is a potential source of pollutants. fertilizers, pesticides are being applied. Not say that they are now, but maintain this lawn for so long that is something that could happen. So overall, as far as a wetland goes, it's compared to different wetlands in town, I would consider this one of the lowest quality wetland in town, and particularly the eastern edge of it, where it's really functioning more as an upland than a wetland at this point. So we take that into consideration. And when we look at the proposed improvements, and the proposed pool, the proposed drainage, and also when Craig had said, I want to emphasize that there's no formal stormwater management features right now to collect water from the driveway, or from the roof, from the impervious surfaces of the roof. There's no formal measures to collect that, clean it, hold it back, and slowly release it. So with the proposed improvements, I first want to say the addition of this stormwater management system, I think that is a great benefit. We're taking some of that water that was being directed around and now collecting it here and slowly releasing it here. So we're replicating that historic natural condition of groundwater slowly moving towards the wetland and getting discharged on its eastern edge. So by putting in the infiltration system there, I think that's a good thing. It not only helps clean the water, it helps slow the water down, and then it slowly releases it. It cools it, it cleans it, slowly releases it to the wetland. There's been discussion about a reduction in stormwater peak discharge and stormwater volume. And I think it's important to recognize we're talking about surface water. Stormwater is surface water. The total water budget, in my opinion, is substantially the same. When you add the groundwater and the surface water together, the water movement through the property is substantially the same. Because although when we reduce the stormwater, that's because we're putting it in the ground. But then it bleeds out of the slope and into the wetland and makes its way off site. So the total volume is substantially the same. Although the stormwater volume is less, but the groundwater volume is more. The next we have, of course, we have the proposed pool that is here. Pools in general, there's a number of features as they relate to wetlands. We've talked about with a traditional pool that there's some storage provided in the pool. So I agree with the town engineer that this provides storage, and detention in itself isn't needed. There was a question about what happens if this fills up. And I think if that happens and it overflows, this becomes essentially a level spreader and just allows it to fill over. If you look at the native soil, these soils, after a 1-inch storm, they start to get 100% runoff because they get saturated and can't accept any more water. So the pool, more than 1 inch, and it won't start that. So beyond that, so I think that it'll be fine here. The lawn would have runoff at the same time that's there today. When you're talking about that, those storms are very infrequent. You're talking about something that happens once less than, once a year or more, 5-year storm, a 20-year storm, 50-year storm, or some of these larger storms are happening more frequently, but on average, the storm that happens on average every 3 days is a 1/2 inch. And so, and those are the storms that mostly affect our wetlands and watercourses, what's happening on a regular basis. So we're going to be collecting those smaller storms, putting them in here, slowly releasing them, and providing cleaner water, cooler water, and slower discharge, but overall the same volume. Then the discussion about activities within the wetland that are proposed. So there's a fringe of fill that's proposed here. We took a look at that. and find that we conclude there's about 200 square feet of area that, in my opinion, would no longer be considered wetland when this is done. It's the least, by law, it's defined as wetland today because the soils are there, but the purpose of the law was put into effect not to just protect wetlands because they're wetland, but because they provide certain functions. And we went through some of those: flood detention, water treatment, groundwater discharge, groundwater recharge. And this wetland now isn't providing those functions. So in my opinion, the loss of that 200 square feet of lawn, dried, drained lawn wetland is not a loss of function. And so that when we take that and also look at the stormwater management that's happening and the habitat enhancement improvements that are proposed. So we have 200 square feet of loss here and 60
More about the habitat.
Yes. So we have 1,600 square feet proposed today. And has double value in that a good portion of that is lawn today. So again, a good portion of that could be a source of pollutants being maintained as lawn. So we'll eliminate a source of pollutants by eliminating lawn, and we'll provide this native buffer. We'll have native ground covers, native shrubs, and adding one native tree. There's a fair amount of trees that already exist here, but we're proposing 300 different, or total quantity of 300 or 300 ground covers and human shrubs and the one pin oak native shade tree. And Mr. Bishop's staff report, he had put in a request, a special condition to ensure that this is at least 15 feet wide, and we're pleased to widen that per his recommendation. It's just a little over 10 feet wide today, so we'll pleased to do that.
I just want to be clear what I'm looking at. So with that red line, that's the wetlands to the right there.
Yeah.
Nothing red. Yeah, that's the wetland.
Yes.
So between the red line and the trees on the left or the border of that's all wetland.
Yes.
So what will be between the trees and the red line? Will that still be lawn? Or are we doing something?
Still be lawn. Okay. This area is the area, and plus 5 feet. To eliminate the lawn. There was, I think, a comment from the neighbor about whether or not a reference to a potential vernal pool. Vernal pools are physically, they're areas that are seasonally wet. And this area is an area that's seasonally wet and does hold water. However, the value for those features is when they provide habitat for obligate certain fauna, certain typically frogs and salamanders, amphibians, and to survive, to have a viable pool, you also need a viable, what is called critical terrestrial habitat. So the pool is aquatic habitat, so it's critical for breeding, development, for the young to get to an age where they can actually walk out of the pool. But then they need a forest that surrounds that, substantial amount of forest that surrounds to provide habitat for the rest of the year, for the rest of their life when they're not breeding. So, and the pool needs good water quality. It needs to be shaded generally. And so here I don't find that this pool physically has what's needed for that habitat, and it also, the critical terrestrial habitat does not exist surrounding. And even if there was a pool off-site and there was a concern that we were impacting terrestrial habitat by putting a swimming pool here, I would disagree with that this pool, the swimming pool, is not having an effect because this lawn area is not providing critical terrestrial habitat for a vernal pool that might be off-site. So, based on all that, often a lot of projects you look at the existing conditions, the wetland is very nice. And so you focus primarily on proposed, but here I think you do have to consider the degradation, the degraded existing conditions, and consider the proposed conditions and how it's been designed with the wetland. And although there's I believe a small area of loss of non-functioning wetland, the improvements with the water management, both groundwater and surface water, and then the improvements to habitat, I believe there's a benefit, a slight benefit to the wetland and watercourse habitat associated with the property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. And I take it, Mr. Kenny, just, although you've said it, so your conclusion is you don't find that there's any adverse impact associated with proposed activities to any wetlands or watercourses within the jurisdiction of the agency?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Council.
Just a couple of questions. How big is the wet? I was going to ask the same question, Mr. Thomas. Could you run your finger along the edge of the wetland again?
Yes.
So everyone can see where it is.
Sure. No, well, actually, I forgot to mention, there's an existing sewer line that goes through the wet. But the wetland comes through here and wraps up here. It's back. And so, yep.
So how many square feet do you think that is? How big is that area?
Is that in the application?
The total wetlands on site? Yeah, I'm looking at the application form. I don't think that specific calculation is provided.
I would say
A little less than a third.
or a quarter.
Yeah, probably quarter.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is what, 38,000 square feet? So
The property is close to 7/10 of an acre. I would say this is taking up a quarter of that, so
Something in the range.
less than probably 20%.
On the application, it says wetland watercourse area altered 0.032 acres.
That's the old.
That's all.
not the amount of question. So, I mean, you got
Maybe 6,000 or 7,000 square feet.
6 or 7,000, you're going to
200
put
square feet.
enhancements into
What?
1,600 square feet?
1,600, we'll be expanding that by a third, so it'll be about 2,000 square feet.
The disturbance is about 200 square feet.
And you presently have a degraded wetland, I think you described it as,
Yes.
but still pretty wet. I saw today, there was water, must have been 6 inches deep up there
I think.
this morning. Why wouldn't you mark off the wetland and allow it to become an undegraded one by preventing the mowing and the use of it for, they have degraded it in the past? But that's, seems to me you got a wetland that's in play. Why would you allow it to continue to be degraded when you have an opportunity here to perhaps enhance the wetland, and then you wouldn't need the cold tech, you wouldn't need anything. You would just allow the water to migrate naturally into the existing wetland, which would then be actually functioning like a wetland.
In that line of thought, I have
Thank you,
a question.
Council.
How is the current lawn in the wetland area being maintained by the owner?
What's their practices or?
Is it being mowed? Is it?
Fully mowed.
I'm looking at it and it seems to be just a regular lawn, not even being dealt with in fashion, if you will. And this is the Inland Wetlands Agency and it looks great, but however, that's a big giant green area between even the trees you want to put in and that red line. I would be more of the opinion that 5 feet might not even be enough. I would say, you know what, bring it out, bring it out to the
Another 5.
145 line maybe. I think, bring it out to like the 145 line.
And I don't have it in front of me, Mr. Chims. I'd like me about another 5 feet.
Where there's a contour there.
It's significant.
We'll take it to one.
No, not that one. Yeah, that one. Okay, I would be happy with that.
4.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the right, but yeah, I mean, that's,
It's a wetlands area.
Yeah.
Dabney made a good point. She's saying it's being mowed.
I know.
That flies in the face of, it's just, I would like
Yeah.
to see it expanded.
Yeah, I'm just
And,
gonna,
and I'm, and historically could also have been fertilized. And I mean,
The only thing that we'd ask you to take into consideration when you deliberate, obviously, because we have no objection to any of the conditions that are articulated in the staff report, including specific condition number 4, which is what we're talking about now. I would just ask you in your deliberations and in accordance with your statutory responsibilities, balancing things, and your I understand the comments with regard to the wetland protection and revitalization. But balance that, if you would, we hope, with regard to the family, the young family does have, a backyard that they would like as much as possible to maintain reasonable function for their children of. They have some concerns with regard, although they are not objecting to the condition in terms of tick issues and things of that nature, because they do have young children. So what we'd ask you to do, respecting comments that we've heard, is when you look at staff condition number 4, which I frankly thought was a reasonable balance, saying extend it by about 5 feet. If in your deliberations you feel it's entitled to further extension, I would hope you would just take some consideration to allowing them still to have a reasonably functional backyard.
how much enjoyment
think
is
it's-
currently
yeah, I'm gonna
being had out of sopping wet lawn?
Is it usable now?
I just wanted to,
Sometimes of the year would be the answer.
Hold on, folks, one at a time. Sorry. Commissioner Bowen is asking a question, and then Commissioner Hood will ask a question, then Commissioner Fain will ask a question, then we'll go down the line that. Okay?
What I'm getting at here is that if it's not currently able to be enjoyed most of the year, and with all due respect, Attorney Fallon, that argument doesn't hold any water.
I'm thinking from that same area,
But-
because that's that
And-
144 mark is where it was indicated before, it's predominantly wet.
Right, so, and like many, forums such as this one, you come to ask or put in an application for one thing, it will bring up something else. And what this is bringing towards now is that wetland area that may historically have been mowed, it's continuing to be mowed, probably shouldn't be mowed. And so there may be in our deliberations, some give and take in terms of our desire to protect and maintain as a functioning wetland area of that yard is in fact.
Bill, would you want to comment on that in terms of, this is not meant negatively or argumentatively.
Okay, that's what we're here.
About this concept that extending that no-mow area, what impact that would have in terms of the viability and the functionality of the wetland in and of itself? I mean, just what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. And to step back, we looked at this in the same way stormwater was considered. And we were looking at how much, in our opinion, it needs to happen to balance any adverse effect that's occurring with the proposal. And so just in the same way that we're not treating all of the stormwater or fixing everything that's coming off the road, we picked a percentage and attacked that. And that's what we did with the habitat here. Certainly, you could improve things by doing more stormwater, and you could improve things by expanding, by eliminating more lawn. So we felt that we had struck a good balance where we're leaving it better than it is. And so that was the objective that we had.
Commissioner Hood, any questions?
I think I'm in the same mind as Dabney.
Okay.
yeah, I looked at the mitigation plan. That's probably the item, this application I have the most comments, although I do have other comments. And I just felt, first of all, that green giant arborvitaes really weren't mitigation plantings, really a screening planting.
I'm sorry, that wasn't intended. And I don't think I referenced that.
Just, that was on your mitigation plan, and I think it's then actually in your discussion. But anyways, to me, that wasn't a part of the mitigation. So, and then again, I I also agree, that we should be, you show some shrubs and some perennials. I think the perennials need to be spread out so they're not shaded by the shrubs. But also, this is a perfect opportunity for us to do more restoration. As everybody said, that area isn't really usable. It does flood. I don't see that changing. You don't have to do, there's a lot of different ways we can manage that. We can use a no-mow lawn. We could use we could use perennials. We could do a lot of different things. But the number one thing is we want to see a management plan in terms of eliminating pesticides and herbicides in that area. I don't think there's any reason to do that. I do think that, given the amount of activity that you're asking to do in the upland buffer and in the wetlands, it's a reasonable request by this agency to ask if you'd expand that. The other part of this is, which a lot of people consider, I'd like to see a prohibition against irrigation in the rear yard, because of all the reasons you guys have already stated. If you irrigate, you're going to have an antecedent moisture condition where you're going to encourage runoff. It's always going to be saturated. So I think it makes only sense on this particular property to not have any irrigation in this rear yard area. I think that'll help with the infiltration and runoff conditions. I did want to make one other comment. Want me to keep going?
No, hold on for a minute. Just come on to respond.
Yeah, happy to hear the rest, but just a couple of thoughts that came to mind. We're happy to take your questions back to our client. Obviously, we can't represent anything right now without them understanding fully what's being asked of them and coming back to plan. But two things. One, the amount of water you see out there right now is not the historic amount of water because of the impoundment. We are working cooperatively with the neighbor to relieve that impoundment. So just by virtue of some of that landscape berm being removed, should you consider that in a future application, it's going to improve the usability of the backyard and get it back to something that it was since 1957 when the house was developed and they started mowing the lawn. They originally had a septic system back there. It wouldn't have been there if there was this much water back there, right? So we are trying to get it to a historic condition that will make it usable. And then, the last, I get it. I was on a wetlands agency. It's really, I love looking at that line. It's very satisfying and saying that's the line. Think about the functions. And, the test I always said was, are we better off with the proposed plan or not? And I hopefully you agree with Bill and I in that mitigation that we're offering exceeds the disturbances that we're creating. And we're, again, happy to widen this at least to the width that, yes. Bishop Staff.
And I think the other thing that is, Commissioner Fain makes a very good point, because, you have the concept, the no-mow concept, which is embodied in the proposed condition of approval. But we also, could, mitigate the current lawn situation by way of Bill's creative ability as far as perennials and native plantings and things of that nature. And that's certainly something that I think clients would be willing to, working with Bill and the commission.
Thank you. Counselor?
Yeah, the use of the backyard, et cetera. Point out that, of course, you're not the backyard commission, you're not the lawn commission, you're not the wetlands commission. Now, wetlands have come to your attention. How it came to you, you have to do something about it. In the past, with the
Is this
wetlands.
a question for us or?
No, it's a comment to bring it up. John was commenting to the commissioner. In the past, this commission with the wetland has known to require markers, require a split rail fence, require a stone wall, require a land stewardship agreement. And it looks like people here are complaining that the backyard is wet because it is a wetland.
So I appreciate the comments, but are there questions for them? You'll be able to say it at your, in opposition, when I get to the opposition. Unless you have specific questions, I'd like to move it along, but I do understand, I think we all understand what you're trying to say. But
I could have phrased that in the question, why don't you put a stone wall up? Fence, but you got the idea.
gotcha, yes.
Sorry.
I'm not going to comment on Mr. Gumper's comments regarding the stone wall. I will just leave it with, we appreciate the comments of the commission We think the staff report was a good approach to taking this. We recognize and respect your desire, perhaps enhance that. I think it can be enhanced. We'd like to work with the commission on it. We only ask that when you make the ultimate decision, as I said, there's some balancing here in terms of the contributory and functionality of the existing wetlands and the benefits associated with the overall plan that we are proposing here in terms of stormwater quality and other factors.
Yeah. And we will work with you. Excellent. Question specifically to that board
Observations, questions?
That'll be when.
I did have a question for Mr. Kenny. So,
Sure, okay.
showing where the wetland was. Bill, did you mark the wetlands? Did you do the wetland work here?
I did not complete the wetland delineation.
Who did?
Stephen and Steve.
Got seats.
Scott.
Oh,
It's the only one.
It's and is
Verikoff can get on it.
how long I've been around. That's the.
Over fun. Could someone point out where the 15-foot would land?
Sure.
So we're talking about that right now.
Oh, yeah.
Before we move on.
So, let me just.
I didn't mean to mark it. I just, if you could just like,
Yeah, sure.
show me where.
I like being accurate. It's the engineer in me.
Okay.
There. There. Something like that.
Good. Thank you.
That's your blue line. And then,
That's the staff report
and
recommendation.
then can you show me line 144?
Tour 44 is, so.
I got you. But the yellow line, now that it's yellow, that's even further than the 5-foot line that are sufficient.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
bigger than
Than
what
that.
we proposed.
3 times.
Okay.
This is what we propose. This is what Tim thinks is,
We proposed about 10.5 feet.
we're comfortable.
So
Gotcha.
you can going with the contour, you could have diminished at the two ends and, could average out more towards the 15 feet.
Again, I think if the release here is successful, it's really about where that low area is. Might not be that contour. That's something we can kind of look collaboratively at.
Again, I don't want to be redundant, but I think the idea of enhancement that involves some form of perennials and enhancement to planting, I think that could be a win-win in terms of protecting the area, but also something a little more practical.
It doesn't, we want it to be attractive.
Right.
We don't want the owner to want to rip it out as soon as they
Correct.
want something that's they're going to enjoy.
I think that's a very good.
Pollinators and things like that. Is that what you mean?
Sure.
That knows how to do it. He's a nursery.
That's to help you.
Trying to help that.
Yeah, I know.
Not talking. What's that connect to that?
Comments if I-
Sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out, and I'm just gonna point this out. Do a lot of pools. Every one of them now has an auto cover on it. I would assume that this one probably will have an auto cover. I would not want to make a prohibition on having an auto cover on it because of the safety factor involved. But if it does have an auto cover, then that benefit of having the 6 inches of.
It depends on the cover because some can just allow the.
Yeah, but almost all of them have the pump and, that's the only one we've done a lot of them with Craig and typically the safety cover has. I just want to point that out. I don't think it's a showstopper, but,
Again, a reason to provide the detention even though it wasn't.
and I just wanted to point that out. And then the other thing I wanted to point, 2 other things. I don't consider the previous plan a feasible, it's an alternative, but I don't consider it feasible and include it. But I think tonight, with your discussion and why you did, I think we've addressed it feasible.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think it just highlights the change in approach.
It definitely highlights it and it's much appreciated. And, it's a big improvement. And the only other thing I wanted to just say to Bill, and then, in terms of, I'm happy with the wetland functions you assessed. But in terms of the values, quality, you know, that's something that we as the agency will assess and not.
He's just providing information.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
there's a difference between functions and there's a difference between the functions of the option, the biological functions. And it can be low, medium, low. Values are what it provides to society as wetland agents. We kind of.
That's something the rest of us probably don't know. So please state again, who you are and what's your.
Well, it's just,
Yeah.
this isn't so much a wetland expert point of view. It's just, but yeah, again, Jay Fain and I am a wetland scientist.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you, gentlemen.
okay, so you're,
Yeah, just very briefly, I know we want to move this along, but so what have we heard here? And what did that mean legally in terms of the criteria that you have to apply for making your decisions? First of all, I would point out that I think the wetlands assessment, the drainage report, the design submitted, everything you've heard tonight confirms that there is not going to be any adverse environmental impact associated with the proposed activities that we ask you to approve. Secondly, covering the point that, again, maybe Commissioner Fain made a little bit, is I think that the prior application may not have been a feasible or prudent alternative. As I said, my hands were not on it. But I do think that it did provide an opportunity for us to provide an alternative proposal. And the confirmatory information that we have provided tonight, we hope you'll agree, demonstrate that the current plant is the most significant. Mitigation is proposed here. It was a strong part of our application. We don't feel there's adverse impacts, but we do think there is room and appropriate opportunity for mitigation here. And we provided you that information with regard to the stormwater quality improvements and the stormwater management improvements, and indeed the planting plan, which we're ready to include to the extent that you think is appropriate. In the final analysis, the wetland functions here and values are not being diminished, but they're actually being improved, as is water quality. I think that's well borne out by the uncontroverted testimony of two very well recognized experts, Mr. Flaherty and Mr. Kenny. There's no evidence of any downstream or off-site impacts associated with what we propose. And I would also point out that the mitigative planting and stormwater management and protection that we are bringing to this property has benefits to off-site property. Lastly, I say that we've reviewed the staff review and recommendation of December 27th. And as I said previously, we have no objection to all of the conditions of approval as recommended by Mr. Bishop. And we leave it to your good equitable discretion in terms of specific condition of approval number 4 as proposed. We certainly have no objection to its present articulation, which is to increase that area, buffer area, if you will, to a minimum of 15 feet. What's already been discussed. And subject to following up and by way of any rebuttal and addressing my colleague's intervention at the appropriate time. Yeah, I thank you very much for your attention.
thank you, Council. So any further people here in the audience that would like to come up and speak in support of this application? Any people online who would like to speak in support of this application? Any folks here that would like to come from the front and speak in opposition to this application? Council, I think that.
Want to see if there's anyone else besides us? Don't think so.
Any people online that would like to speak in opposition to this application? Okay. So looks like you.
I got a handout here. And it's just one to death.
Sure. Thank you.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I think this is this, it's just that, right?
This is what you have in front of you for me. This is a picture taken from the rear deck of the house at 100 Waterville, showing the pond. And you can see in the back, a big willow tree right across the way. And then up in the back is the house of, that's under consideration here. And
Yeah.
the reason I passed this out to you is pointed out by Ms. Barrington to me today. This picture's taken on January 3rd. This is the worst that this looks during the course of the year. It's a beautiful pond, it's a beautiful area, and they are very, very concerned and dedicated to protecting it and keeping it as close as it can be to the way it is now. They've been diligent in the past in bringing to the attention of the commission, not the commission, of the department, any issues that have to do with neighboring properties, and there have been several. And there's been several calls, and there's been quite a bit of action on here. I don't know if it was during Mr. Bishop's time or Mr. Terry's, I'm not sure which, maybe both. Start out, first of all, saying that the pond is a watercourse. And it's defined as that in the regulations and in the statute, section 2.148. The introduction to your regulations says in section 1.1, many watercourses are in danger of destruction because of, I quote, the diversion or obstruction of water flow. And then under your definitions of significant activity, any activity which may inhibit the natural dynamics of a watercourse system or which causes a substantial diminution or flow of the natural water. Diminution is a hard word. The criteria for the treatment include the one from section 10.2.d, recognition that watercourses may be irreversibly destroyed by the diversion, diminution, or obstruction of water flow. And you should also take into consideration impacts of the proposed regulated activity, wetlands or watercourses outside the area for which the activity is proposed. That's 10.2.f. And then I know Mr. Fallon started out saying that we had a burden on us. That's completely wrong. Section 10.4, the burden is on the applicant to prove that he's entitled to the permit and to present alternatives to the proposed activity. And feasible means that it's able to be constructed or implemented consistent with sound engineering principles, and prudent means it's economically or otherwise reasonable in light of the social benefits to be derived from the proposed regulated activity. And I don't know what social benefit gets derived from construction of a swimming pool. I think that you take that into consideration. It's not like it's an affordable housing project or something that you're dealing with. The main concern that my clients have is that there will be a diminution in the flow of the water to the pond. That's why they're so concerned about the detention system here. And especially when they were taking up all the water from front and from the roof and from, I think at one point, the sump pump. The applicant's gone to great lengths to show that the proposal will reduce the peak flows and there won't be any adverse impact caused by an increase of water going into the neighbors. That's not our concern, really. Our concern is that this will cause a decrease in the water flowing into the pond. That decrease is important to them in their past experience. They know that in very low water times, very hot, dry summers, the pond they have in their back gets covered with algae. And they know that if the pond keeps moving, there is an inlet right behind the, not an inlet, the water comes into the pond right behind, on both sides of the willow tree. There's two different things. I was there actually this morning. You can see it rippling in. And it's actually in motion. There is water spilling out the far end of the pool. Not very fast, but it is continuous. And Mr. Schultz has calculations on it, which he will be happy to discuss with you in a minute. And the real problem is that we want to protect the pond, want to make sure that the flow stays the same. Don't want any more water going into the pond. Don't want any less water coming into the pond. This is not an ambush on the applicant. Since November, I've been asking the applicant if he had anything that could show to us that there would not be a change in the amount of water flowing into the pond. And crickets, we just have not heard from him, which leads me to believe that there's no information on that. You saw that you heard him say that he didn't really do any calculations with respect to the pond. And that is why we're here. The burden is on the applicant to show that there won't be an impact downstream. And we are raising that as interveners and as neighbors and as the owners of a downstream pond. Now, you want to come up and?
Sure.
Keep it short because it's getting late already.
You did a great job. It's just the application does say that in any and all water events studied, there will be a reduction in water.
So this is Mr. Schultz, and Mr. Schultz has two odd names. His first name is Craig, K-R-A-I-G, and his last name Schultz is S-C-H-U-L, no T-Z. So,
And I am no hydraulic engineer. I do have a master's degree in ag. I have a master's degree in statistics, and I was a paralegal for 10 years. So I have a little education.
Forgive the paralegal.
But it does say in the application that in any and all water events studied, there will be a reduction in both flow and volume offsite, which means you can see directly from your own site walk, this is a water course. It flows from 875 to 975 and into 100 Waterville. Has all of the characteristics of a water. It is always flowing. There's occasionally, we have very reduced rainfall that it does not flow, but it's flowing today. It's flowing yesterday. When you guys saw the property, there was exactly 0.002 inches of water that had fallen on the property in the last 5 days. So under normal circumstances, if this was just a temporary flow, it would have been gone. It's not gone. It's never gone. It's always there because that's what feeds the pond. So if we reduce water at all from that property into our property, you're going to have an impact on the pond. How many people in this room have visited the pond? No.
No. I mean, when you say visited the pond.
This pond?
Yeah, we did.
Sidewalk.
No one has been on 100 Waterville. No one has been to visit the outlet. No one has been there to visit what the inlet looks like. No one has visited the pond. No engineers, no environmental scientists, no lawyers. No one has been there to visit the pond. No one knows.
We did walk to the very
Yes.
bottom line of
Correct.
975.
Right.
So we were at the
We
pond,
visually,
Correct.
and I was looking right at your house.
Yes. And
I mean, I was.
the other end of the house,
Wearing my new boots.
the other end of the house is the outlet to the pond. And one of the really important calculations is what's happening at the other end of the pond. Because if you know the inflow and you know the outflow, then you know whether or not the body is going to continue to flow.
So if I could, that gets to the heart of my question is, how do you know how much groundwater is supplying to this pond and how much water?
That's an awesome question. And somebody,
These ponds are primarily fed by groundwater.
correct, but this is a man-made pond.
Oh, it is.
Yes, it is. And in fact, it's what we believe, what we've heard from the neighbor around is that this is a lined pond. So a lined pond is not going to get groundwater because it's lined. It's going to get primarily surface water. So a reduction in the surface water is even more important.
It's lined and it
Well,
is.
we don't know that. So.
It's not lined.
Yeah.
So this is from 1961 to 1970. It was man-made when those houses were put there. There's a portion of the end of the pond was dammed. And what we hear, I don't know because I'm not a pond expert. I've not done any dives in the pond, is that there is some sort of liner,
It's a clay bottom,
clay bottom.
clay bottom.
So how much water is going to infiltrate from groundwater? I have no idea.
I just want to be careful that we are exacting and factual in statements that we make in this room, because while the 875 property wetlands may feed into this to some degree, we don't know that to what degree it is feeding this pond.
Don't.
So let's just make sure that we're,
What we do know is that the calculations that were provided would reduce the flow by about 1,600 gallons a day on average. Doing relatively simple math.
And from your observation, is there any other wetland in this area that feeds?
Oh, it goes all the way down to the Mill River.
And there's an outlet, you're saying, on the other side of this pond.
Correct.
So has anyone, to your knowledge, done a study of the inflow and the outflow of the pond itself?
I did, but I'm not an expert down in there. I can tell you what you did. I did do the basic test, which is measure the flow rate of the water and how big the outlet is. I'm calculating about 5,000 gallons a day flow out of the pond. The calculations provided were that the reduction in flow off of the property at 875 would be about 1,600 gallons a day. So somewhere around 30% of the way. Which in a very rainy event, right, which is where we are in December, which is when I did it, is a fair bit. Now you take a lower flow year when you have less rainfall, that could be 40%, it could be 50%. Who knows how much it's going to be before you're taking the water out and the bottom no longer moves.
Well, their expert used the words volume unchanged. They said it would be cleaner and slower, but that the volume would be unchanged.
In the application, I can pull up the application.
That's what he said. I wrote,
Right.
I kind of,
They just said,
They didn't study our well.
well, no, but the attorney said, and the engineer said that there would be a reduction in the flow and volume of water, just tonight.
what I wrote.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the application and the numbers were
The
provided.
other thing is, it's purely speculation to try to estimate the rate or the ratio of the amount of water. that's
Correct.
Because again, we don't know how much is being fed by groundwater. There may be clay, there may be breaks in the clay, we don't know. So again, let's just be careful.
So is the theory that the clay is natural because we have clay soils here, or it was brought in to make a liner? Because the soil in Fairfield is clay in a lot of places.
Do you mind just stating your name?
I'm Helen Hayes and I'm at 849 Mill Hill. And the gentleman that grew up in my house stopped by a couple of years ago and they wanted to see the house. And he said, oh, the pond looks amazing. And he goes, my father and all the neighbors around in the 60s with the flow, which was the water that was flowing, decided because it was gathering to go in and they rented a backhoe. That's what he told me. And they went down there and they widened the pond, clay bottom, he said, and built the flow going.
Had a clay bottom or you installed one? I don't want to fuss.
No,
over
that's
it.
what he said. He
This is the
said
1960s.
it's a clay bottom. So from the 60s.
Introducing a new term
clay
that's.
bottom.
Well, I think somebody should study it. It'd be wonderful.
Why didn't you,
No,
can I ask a question? Why didn't you hire an engineer? You filed you filed a verified petition to intervene.
yes.
We're now in this judicial type proceeding.
Because according to the law, the burden of proof is on the applicant.
I'll-
The citation,
I'll address that.
that is the citation.
Give us the information you want to provide to us and we will do with it what we will.
My burden of proof is to say, is there potentially a problem? You accepted there's potentially a problem. Now the burden of proof is to prove from the applicant that there's not going to be a problem.
I'll address that.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's our main concern is the application says they're going to reduce water. We really have no idea what's going to happen. In low volume situations, the pond could go stagnant, which is reducing an area of wetlands, which is almost the size of 875 Mill Hill.
Wait, but again, please, because we've already established that this pond is being fed by multiple areas of wetland,
Yes.
just what is in.
What we
subject
believe,
matter.
because it's never been studied.
I think that it's safe to say considering how much wetland area is around it. So,
Ms. Bowman, if I may.
Sure.
I think, there's water coming this.
Right.
There's water going out of the pond. Pond stays essentially the same level. Yes, that you measure the outflow gives you a pretty darn good idea what the inflow is going to be. And that's what Mr. Schultz is saying. figured it's a certain, like 5,000 gallons to go out. And if this proposal is going to reduce it by even 1,000 gallons, that's a 20%, and the pond will decrease.
And I think we all understand that and appreciate that we know that his assertion that it will impact, it could possibly impact the health of the pond. Absolutely.
We can give them the project engineer.
I'd like to speak.
This, your name
My
and
name is Ann Farrington. I live at 100 Waterville. This all started 4 years ago. I have called conservation every single solitary year for 4 years.
Wait, this application started 4 years ago?
Well, this application is on record from 3 years ago.
Let's talk about this application. We don't have,
Everything has led to what's
okay,
today.
so talk to us about today. and what's
Historically leads to today. So you have to look at yesterday to understand what today brings. And that's the problem. We can't explain this to our lawyer in 5 minutes. I moved in 4 years ago. The water flew that way. I had a neighbor who came out every year, mulched it, filled it, tried to stop it. I had the people that owned the house prior to them. I came home, they ran a pipe from their yard into my side yard where we receive water over here. I called conservation, they shut it down. They had put in a sub pump illegally. The sub pump is producing particulates into the soil, which is adding to the fact that they have a water retention. No one made them, they issued an NOV. They didn't make them take it out. It's part of the problem. So problem is human intervention. There was so much human intervention from 4 years ago. 4 years ago, the neighbors started trying to hold it back from the other neighbor. And they tried to run it into my side yard. Then I shut that down. I called conservation 4 years in a row. They should have intervened from 2019. They didn't. They intervened in 2022. Finally, an NOV saying, you got to take this little bit of mulch that they put in there out. Tim was there. Sarah was there. Many people know about this. It's a long going thing. So you can't tell me don't go back 4 years because this goes back for 4 years. I've been receiving their water. And now you're going to
You
say,
wanted to receive their water.
I do.
You said.
I do. So I'm trying to
You
stop.
just said you wanted to receive their water.
So I want to try to stop
So
them.
then you should leave the berm in place so there's no more water coming to you, right? Is that what is it that you
No,
want?
we want their water. We don't want wells put in the
Show
ground.
me show me a report from some engineer, somebody
It's
who,
not my burden of proof.
I'm not sure about that. So that's where I'm gonna let now council come in and tell us what his point of view is on what your council said.
State law against this. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that we did not own the property at the time she's alluding to. And we didn't build any berms. We didn't divert anything. So just.
Yeah, right. So council, would you mind, if you
Sure.
can,
Is Mr. Gumper finished? I don't want to cut him.
sorry, I thought you were, because you went, now your clients went.
We don't respond to Ellen says it's allowed to.
Sure, you can have
We're going to fight about the last word.
Yeah.
Lawyer.
well,
There's a woman online that said she raised her hand and you're not letting her in. Her name is Bridget Schulman.
I don't.
She called you. Yeah, she called me.
I didn't see her hand.
She said she raised her hand and you
She's
didn't.
on mute.
If you were you pant.
She can put something in the chat. She can. There we are.
we will get everybody.
Okay. We'll let council go and then we'll be happy to listen
Send
to
you a bathroom break. So.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
5 minutes, everybody. 5 minutes and everybody catch your breath. That's fine.
Be nice to each other.
We're gonna try to get to it. It's taking a little bit longer and it's, we're only at,
Years, and then they moved up and dated
One
it.
thing, see how far.
Greenfield Hills.
Oh, way up.
Yes.
They were too much for us.
All right, we're back on the record. We're still in the public hearings aspect, and I'm gonna ask counsel, Attorney Collin.
I think thinking that someone who wants to be heard, right?
You'll have time to,
Okay, fine.
I wanted counsel to address the immediate questions right before the break, and then we can go back to them. That's fine.
Let me address legal and the factual based upon the comments I heard from the interveners and counsel. There's two proceedings in front of you this evening. One is our inland wetlands permit application, and we have the burden of proving that we have satisfied the criteria for the issuance of an inland wetlands permit under your regulations and under the statute. That's not disputed. There is also an intervention petition that's been filed pursuant to 22A19. The filing of an intervention petition requires you, as you will do at your, in your work session, to make a separate independent finding as to whether or not the activities and the allegations, the activities that are proposed will, in accordance with the allegations of the intervention, result in the reasonable likelihood of unreasonable adverse effect on the public trust in the air, water, or other natural resources of the state. The intervention petition, once put in front of you, raises the issue, is it likely, reasonably likely, based upon the evidence that has been submitted by the intervener, that the proposal will cause unreasonable pollution, impairment, or destruction of the natural resources of the state. I have the burden on my application. They have the burden on their intervention. And that's what should not be missed. Okay, so if that's the case, and indeed the legislature felt strongly enough about it, that they amended 22A19A to add a provision that required that the verified pleading contain specific factual allegations identifying specific alleged unreasonable pollution, impairment, or destruction of natural resources. So speculation, unsubstantiated allegation, general assumptions do not satisfy the intervener's burden. You can't say, well, it may be, or it could be. You have to produce factual evidence. In this case, I would suggest expert evidence that would sustain their burden of proof and satisfy the standards of the intervention. With that as the background, let's just talk about the intervening facts and the statements that were made. First of all, I find it to be unusual that we are here trying to get this young family a pool. They are 180 feet from the subject pond. The Farrington Schultz house is 20 feet from that pond. The pool terrace is 25 feet, and their own pool, which they enjoy as they should, is 35 feet from that pond. Now, the issue that they propose, and I'm not going to deal with all the other intervention stuff, the vernal pools and stuff. You want me to go through that, but they didn't offer evidence on that, so I consider those abandoned. But The issue they raise with you is diminution of water flow to the pond that in the context of their intervention would result in the unreasonable destruction, impairment, or loss of a natural resource of the state. They have that burden, as I said before, to prove those allegations. First of all, they offer no expert evidence with regard to anything to do with the pond and its current water flows or how their water flows might affect the pond based upon what we're doing in the future. The other thing they totally, I don't know that they do it intentionally because it's a concept that if I didn't have Mr. Flaherty and Mr. Kenny, I wouldn't maybe grasp either, but it was testimony before you, is there are two things at play here. There is surface water and there is groundwater. And there's no evidence that's been offered by the interveners to demonstrate that there will be any ultimate diminution in water flow to the pond. They argue that there is a surface water decrease. Minimally, that may be true, but there is also evidence heard from Mr. Kenny and Mr. Flaherty, an engineer, and Mr. Kenny's credentials, that groundwater actually will increase. And then we hear about clay linings and people dropping by houses and they dug out the pond, do that. There's no evidence of that. But what there is evidence, and I think it was Commissioner Bowen who made the comment, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but that's sort of a false narrative anyway, because if the issue is groundwater flow into this pond, surface water flow into this pond, well, geez, this pond is fed by, a 5-acre watershed. And all you have to do is walk the property like you did the Sunday before Christmas. Thank you for your dedication. And you can see the natural, topographical conditions. So there's really nothing here before you that would in any way justify a conclusion, which has to be by substantial evidence produced by the interveners, that what we're proposing with this pool is going to have any adverse impact on that pond. And it's not. And in fact, one could argue, and I would argue, that when you look at the enhancements and improvements that are being made, not only to wetlands functions, but to overall water quality, which is now non-existent on the site, there is an enhancement here, which in some marginal way may actually benefit the ecological and environmental health and well-being of that pond. So those are my comments about the intervention. Be pleased to answer any questions that any of the public might have or respond further to anything Mr. Gumper has to offer. Thank you.
There was somebody, Rob Schulten.
Bridget. She's
They're
gone
the
again.
same.
There we go.
Okay.
And hey, I'll take up 2 minutes of your time. I apologize for that.
Please.
I'm at 105 Waterville Road. We are the recipient of all the pond water. And we have lived in this house for 32 years. And I'd just like to say that I am up early every morning. I'm talking to the conservation people at this point. I'm up early before the crack of dawn. Going to that pond are deer, coyotes, foxes. I mean, it's all the wildlife no one ever sees because there's a couple 100 acres behind Waterville Road. So, I would hate to see anything happen to the pond because, you could say, oh, there's wetlands beside us. The animals can live there. Well, I'm sorry. It dries up 3 months of the year. And those animals are going to find water somewhere. And they've been using the pond for 30 years. But that's not the reason I want to talk. There's a pond a quarter mile down Mill Hill Road where a snapping turtle lives. And he, every spring, makes that quarter mile walk up the hill. I assume he's got intentions, but he's done it every spring for 30 years. And the people who own the house a couple owners ago tried to kill everything in the pond because they didn't want the bullfrogs making noise because they were trying to sell the house. But this old guy lived. He started out the size of a Frisbee. Today, he's the size of a hubcap. And, I just don't think we should be screwing with the pond.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, can I just, one other thing, I just wanted to report, because I said I would do that. During the break, I spoke to the Hudsons. They heard the dialogue in terms of maybe enhancements relative to condition of approval for. They certainly have no objection. I mean, we're at about 10 and a half feet now. The staff recommendation was to 15 feet. We might suggest to you as a fair balancing of those factors that I referred to before, 20 feet. And that we would also leave it to you. But again, getting back to, I think, Commissioner Fain's comment that, maybe we could be creative here, working with staff as part of the condition of approval to do not only a no-mow enhancement, but working with any native plantings, things of that nature.
I'm probably, my intention is to not close public tonight, just so you know.
Okay.
Because I want to discuss that particular point with all my commissioners and with staff and then give you and your client an opportunity to discuss it. Because I think that's the route we're probably going to go.
Okay.
It's just.
I appreciate that.
And let you know.
I just wanted to let you know, though, that we were.
Yeah. And I'm happy to hear it. I think most of my commissioners, the commissioners here might be happy to hear that as well.
I have a technical question for Tim. Let's say, let's speculate for a second that this pond is man-made. Is it protected as a natural resource?
Yes.
Yes, by definition, our regulations and state regulations, water course is a water course regardless of how it came to be.
Right.
And interestingly, most ponds are man-made.
Yeah.
I won't make a categorical statement, but I bet you a large percentage of the ponds in Fairfield are man-made. So that's nothing unusual.
If I may respond to your comment, Tom Stanky in his glory days insisted that the Fairfield Ludlow High School, when they put in their gym, needed complete inland wetland approval because there was a sewer pipe that ran from Winton Park across all the way downtown. And he said that was a water course, and he actually was correct. My argument was that on a rainy day, I-95 is a water course because the water runs down the side. It does actually, a man-made water course is a water course. That's.
Okay. But I understand where you were coming from, Commissioner.
Yeah.
But
I still think that there's still, I mean, for me, to really wrap my head around all of this, obviously we're going to be continuing this, but if the intervener is primarily concerned with adverse effects on the pond due to diminution of water flow, then I think that that we need to understand the amount of water that is coming from this subject property feed into the pond and to what degree.
what amount of that water is coming from just that subject
Well,
property?
right.
There's so much area
And
around
even
it.
if it's man-made,
Yeah.
it could still be fed by groundwater, right?
Absolutely. I mean, given the topography, I think everyone would agree that it's water and surface water fed.
Well, it's like the basement.
I'm
the
sorry,
sump pump.
groundwater and.
The sump pump is pumping out pumping out the water that's seeping up through the basement.
Groundwater will infiltrate that pond.
So I guess what I'm getting at here is if it is considered a natural resource, then it is in our purview to consider how it's going to be adversely affected in order to determine how it would, or
Yeah, we
if it
need
would
more
be adversely.
Yeah, but my question is, the sump pump now is actually along the border of the proposed sump pump will be along the border of the property, closer to the pond. Is that what I'm thinking? Is that what I saw?
That is correct. Instead of,
Can you kind of give us more information on the functionalities of the sump pump and what happens at the end of it as it comes out of the basement and deposits itself down on that corner down?
so sump pump currently discharged here. Then its surface flow follows natural topography. I think most of it ends up back in this low point. And super wet times, there's a little bit of leak off over here as well because this flattens out. So basically, when we take the sump pump discharge here to the other side of the wall, it will no longer be obstructed by this.
And then I think the way the topography goes, it's gonna
Oh, then you go back to the
it'll
topo, it will absolutely go to the pond.
go to the pond. Yeah, right.
And you said there's gonna be some riprap at the end of that
Yep, well, for erosion.
for erosion control.
The water still goes through all that.
But the question isn't the flow or the direction of flow, it's the volume.
But I think, well, I think the point that's being made, which I think is a good one, is that based upon the new location of the sump pump, there's
You might actually increase.
common sense, there's going to be an increase of surface flow.
We have an incremental decrease because of the introduced detention system, which again, I posit that is a good thing for all the wetlands and water courses downstream. But if there happens to be an incremental decrease in the surface flow because of it, there may be an incremental increase to offset that with the sump pump.
That's what Mr. Kenny was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The overall volume.
The water balance, that's our.
We have enough, Mr. Chairman, one thing I will just say for consideration, and we have enough confidence in the good sense and equitable nature of this commission, working with staff, that if you felt that otherwise we were ready to close the hearing tonight, and you're saying, well, we'll leave it open just to protect you so that, you know, if you got issues, I don't feel that way. I listened to the dialogue here. I think I understand what the commission is interested in, you know, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. So I just throw that out because if I'm not uncomfortable with the commission discussing some modification to proposed condition number 4, we would do it.
Council, I appreciate the thought and the comment, but I think it's been made clear, at least for me, that there was discussion between burdens. Your burden towards the application and the intervener's burden as on your intervention. It will be up to the interveners to do what they wish to do with the time provided to them. And the public hearing continues to be open. If they wish to take that time to do something with it, they can. And then I'll be able to close the public hearing.
Understood.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue this hearing, adjourn this hearing, and continue to the February.
All in favor? Aye, thank you.
You know, do you know it's gonna be February? I mean.
No, could I address that?
Oh,
Because I
she's always in Florida. Oh.
Well, you do have the option.
Do I look tan? What I would ask, if it was okay, because we're celebrating our 50th anniversary, so we're gonna be away, the kids for the trip.
But then you have to give it to us.
But, no problem with that, but the question is, you know, I could participate virtually, but I think I'd rather be here.
I think I'd like you to.
Sometimes there's techno troubles.
Yeah,
So I would ask that it would be to your March.
that's fine.
And Mr., if Sarah and Tim, you need an extension, I don't, if we do, I'll get that to you tomorrow.
That's what I was gonna
Yeah,
do.
we just need that in writing.
Yeah, so if
I'll
you,
continue.
if you are granting us the
I am.
ability to, then just do it in writing and then we're good with that. So it'll be on the March 7th.
I think so, whatever.
Whatever that is. So that's good. Thank you.
Can I make just one comment? I tell you, and it's just me. Sometimes I'm uncomfortable when
I want to hear what.
the sole qualifying criteria for accepting, as it's presented, information is that it's expert testimony. You know, for me, show me a video. Someone wants to say this water is moving. I don't need to hire an expert. Show me a video. I mean, there's other ways, and I want to make the point, we've come into that trap where I don't like it when someone says I have the bigger briefcase full document, therefore I'm right.
Okay.
So that's where I'm coming from.
The law supports you.
That wasn't done tonight, and that's a problem for me.
Well, that's why I'd like
Just
to
put out there that I would have accepted
So I
your information.
Commissioner, first of all, I think the
I
law,
don't mean from you.
Yeah. So it's.
The principle is I talk so much and people, so it's what I'm saying.
Please, I'm asking a question. The last time we were here, you said you were gonna walk all four properties and you chose to only walk two because
Walk, we can actually go to the edge of one property and look across a fence to see.
just wonder why you didn't go to the other side to see the.
I did, and we have pictures where I went to the fence. Now, I wasn't certain, you have to understand, when we do a site walk, I wasn't certain that I wouldn't have been trespassing in someone else's yard, not yours, but I was at the fence. So I was, for all intents and purposes, standing in the park. So yeah, we did go as far as we could have in 975.
Just want to say, just one other thing, just to Peter's point. We are not interested in creating a situation where people are having to spend a lot of money on expert testimony.
Thank you.
That is not it's not about who's got the biggest briefcase or checkbook. So I just wanted to say that because personal testimony, personal experience is great, but we have to take your.
There's ways of validating.
Yeah,
Doesn't take
thank
money.
you. It's valid.
All right, well, I need to move on.
Thank you.
We have a few more.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
My wife will be.
Number 3, under public hearings, WP 23-124, Great Coastal Engineering 131-123 Fairfield Woods Road, also known as Dogwood Green Condominiums. At 46 parcel 16, pond dredging within a regulated area. Decision may be made if the hearing is completed. The hearing may be continued. The original 35-day public hearing timeframe to complete the hearing ends on February 7, 2024. So the public hearing may be continued. 7/20. 65-day time extension may be provided by the applicant for further public hearing continuation if possible. If the hearing is completed, the agency shall make a decision within 65 days. Staff recommends approval with conditions. Hello.
Hello. So my name is Gaetano Marini. I am the owner of M&L Construction. My firm hired by the Dogwood Green Condo Association to dredge their private pond. Our engineer that we hired was Race Engineering. Site monitoring, wetland survey was done by William Kenny Associates. We applied for the dredging.
Leave the recommendation.
Of our staff for the letter.
Correct.
And that's why you're here now. Give us information to why we should agree with our staff. Why? Yeah, what do you can try to?
Okay, so we are dredging the ponds on the property.
How are you gonna do it?
Yeah, how are you gonna do it? How are you gonna get
You guys aren't familiar with the drawings or?
Yeah, but you're used to public hearing, you need to just kind of lead and walk us through the process.
So there's 2 levels of approval. One is staff level, where you can just talk to them and our staff and Sam or Sarah, and they'll sign off on that. This is now a public hearing for the whole entire town of Fairfield to be here. And you need to discuss what you're gonna do in detail. From how you get the trucks there, what machinery you're gonna use, are there gonna be any erosion and sediment controls, or where are you gonna put the dredge and how do you get it out of there? You gotta tell us all this.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
All right.
So my firm, I am a site development contractor.
Okay.
Hired by. So we have a set of drawings that you guys have. First thing that we do is we come in our erosion controls, exactly as shown. We then build a full depth on tracking Wetland roadway to the pond. It's a very small, only about 1,000 square feet. The area of disturbance is just over like 10,000 square feet. So not a lot of. dredging itself, the material that's gonna be excavated out of the pond. So right now, the pond is pretty much full of silt material. But we're gonna clean the pond, bring it back to its original state. It's about 1,000 cubic yards of material that have to leave the site. So we build a roadway, we bring our equipment, our excavator into the pond, dig, put that material into trucks, dump trucks, and they leave the site.
First you have to de-water, correct?
Yes, so there is a stream. Now, your recommendation was correct to do this during the summer months where the flow is, that is something. So to be more specific, what we do is we build a coffer first at the culvert. Coffer dam, what that is a stone, we basically tile stone where the water comes in, so that any silt doesn't get back into the front of the area. We then sand dag, build a stream area so that the water continue to flow downstream. Dredge the pond, and basically open the pond back up to the original.
So, part of the state water quality permit, you're not allowed to discharge any turbid water downstream. You have a,
Turbidity currents,
you have just,
yeah,
there's those shown on the plan?
they are.
And are you gonna monitor the turbidity? Do you have somebody to monitor?
Have an engineer on site. He will monitor it.
So. Site monitor?
We have a site monitor. And site monitor will be, Andrew and the associates.
So I'm assuming when you started this discussion, you said that you saw the proposed approval by staff's recommendation. There's a number of items in that recommended approval. Are you or your client agreeable to all the conditions that are on that
We are,
recommendation?
go through them one by one if you.
You don't need to, we have it here as well. I just want to know if you and your clients are okay. And then some of my commissioners might have questions.
We are.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Any further?
Yeah, I just thought, there is no turbidity curtain not shown on the plans, I believe, so that needs to get added to the plans.
Okay,
We
good.
want to make sure we have provision that turbidity will be monitored and some pumping will be stopped if it goes above, what is it? I forgot what it, Jackson turbidity units, but I forgot what number it is.
I have it somewhere.
Yeah,
And I
that,
don't know.
make sure that's reflected on the plans.
But each?
You're gonna,
Yeah, it's in there. Control.
And what's the site monitoring schedule?
I didn't have it
Was once a week.
specified. It generally depends on the,
Yeah, I think because this is going to be done in a short period of time, right?
yeah.
It's gonna be quick. Yeah.
So sometimes it's every day, like.
Yeah, well, I'd like to have it more than.
What do you think it'll be?
Yeah.
A week? How quickly do you think it's quick?
Oh, this will be a month and a half.
Month and a half?
Of start to finish,
In the actual,
or 6 weeks.
the active pumping process, I'd like to have more recent, more frequent inspections. When it's dewatered and you're actually just mucking out and when it's dry, we can go to once a week, but when you're actively working in there, I'd like to see more frequent.
Yeah.
So why don't you make a motion with that addition, and I think.
Okay, I'll make the motion then. The addition that the frequency of the inspection schedule be altered and that we add the turbidity curtains and the vision for monitoring the turbidity downstream.
Thank you for the motion. I'm gonna table it for a moment. I just lost that we're in a public hearing, so this was the applicant
Okay.
giving his thing. There are other people here, so I'm assuming you're done with your presentation. Any folks in the public here in support of this application?
You all are.
You're all in support? Oh,
Yay.
You have a question? Sure. If you'd like to say something, please feel free to come up, give us your name and address and tell us what you have to say.
It's Rick Esper, 1159 Stratfield Road.
Okay.
The inflow to the pond comes from across the street, underneath the sidewalk where the bank is. Then it goes underneath a bridge. And that is now all clogged up with garbage.
Okay.
The inflow is, not on our property.
The culvert under the bridge.
Right.
At the bank, M&T Bank.
Right. This is not going to be conducive.
Is that something you can look at?
Yeah, from the town.
Engineering's, as of last week, was working with, or trying to get in touch with M&T Bank about the collapsed wall and
It's already,
Okay, because we've been doing that for a long time, trying to get in touch with M&T.
yeah, that's not me, that's engineering.
okay.
The walls failed.
Not my job.
Put in a culvert.
Yeah, so it's unfortunately out of our particular jurisdiction, but the proper parties are aware of it. The town's department is engineering department.
We can try to do this.
Just one other question. Did you test the material?
Yeah,
That was,
Okay.
yeah, we didn't have any of that information.
part of the thing.
That was on a condition 5.
Okay, and you'll
These conditions,
supply that information?
sure,
Because,
that's good.
this is flows downstream from Nolan Fish, right, which we had
That we know have said.
had a problem.
Okay.
Because of that contamination, our costs increase to transport the materials to where they can be dumped.
Well, that's what we wanted to know.
Well, yeah, but he's gonna do tests. That's what
We already did the test, it's already,
That's condition 5.
Oh, okay.
Just as a side note, would the flood commission be able to help them?
Flood and erosion control is, secretary's on that line. You have a question for,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Dick's on the call if you have a question.
Sure. Dick, I don't know if you can hear us, if you can, hello? Yeah. Might not be there.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Get on mute.
You might try to reach out to the Flood and Erosion Control Commission because the garbage in the culvert is related to what push that garbage through that to where that goes.
Okay. So, you all agree that you're hearing report of all of this application? Yes. Okay. I'll bring that back on. It's Commissioner Fain's motion.
May close public hearing, make a motion to close public hearing.
Second. Yeah. Motion. Okay. Peter, right, second. All in favor to close? And take the header discussion. Now there's a motion on the table by Commissioner Fain for approval with this addition.
Frequent fine site monitoring, monitor the acidity levels,
Turbidity was in there already, but I think it's
added turbidity curve.
Yeah. Okay.
You want the turbidity levels to be slightly under that.
It has whatever
Yes,
state
yeah.
standard is.
Standards.
That is the motion on the floor. Second to that. Sure. Okay, Kate, someone holding seconds. All in favor of approving? That's all around. Congratulations. Keep in touch with our staff so
What
that
a beautiful spot. I had never been
Yeah.
back there.
Faster than a swimming.
No, we went back there. We're like, this is absolutely lovely back.
Drive right by it.
Yes. Oh, it's like a little oasis. People were like, get into this place.
Like in 1970.
Roman numeral 5 applications for receipt. So WP 23 159, ATL Builders LLC, 447 Stratfield Road.
Yes.
Map 31, parcel 202, Riverbank stabilization within a regulated area. Last date for public hearing or decision is March 8th, 2024. Last regular meeting prior is March 6th, 2024. Staff recommends scheduling public hearing for February 7th, 2024. Okay, public hearing, February 7th.
I agree. It was smart.
Will be this, and then we just, no, that's
No, that's
March.
March.
Oh, good, okay, good.
It'll be these next two.
Yep, so then, let's do that. And then number 2, WP-23-172, Town of Fairfield, Lakeman Lane over Sasko Brook. Placement of bridge number 049871. Old Road number 2, Wakeman Lane over Sasko Brook. Last April public hearing or decision is March 8th, 2024. Last regular meeting prior is March 6th, 2024. Staff recommends scheduling public hearing for February 7th, 2024. Roman numeral 6, applications for discussion. Number 1, application request for WP-22-159. WP-23-165, Muddy Puddle 3 LLC, 61 Sparks Highway, map 170, parcel 38. Request to allow material generated by construction and additional retaining to remain as existing conditions, large modification to the proposed house, driveway, patio, stormwater detention system, and septic system within a regulated area. The public hearing or decision is February 9th, 2024. Last regular meeting prior is February 7th, 2024. Staff recommends tabling pending departmental review. Yeah, I think we should do that. Okay, number bills and bonds releases, number 7, Roman 7, bills and bond releases. Number 1, IWP 2020-21-08, Patterson Club, 1118 Cross Highway, restore violation disturbances for clear cutting wooded swamp and regrading near holes 3 and 4 Morgan Lane within a regulated area. Request of Walter Stapleton, final bond release of $5,000, partial bond release of $34,200, original $39,200 approved in January of 2023. Staff recommends final bond release of $5,000.
Motion.
Anybody seconds? Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 2, IWP 13-14-12, formerly Relic, now Scalise. JTH Builders, 3250 North Street, construct new dwelling and septic system within a regulated area. Request of Walter Stapleton for final bond release of $9,700. Staff recommends final bond release of $9,700. Any motion on that?
Motion to
Debbie?
release.
Any second on that?
Second.
Commissioner Fain, second. All in favor? Aye. I have a question. Who's Walter Stapleton? I don't know who that is.
He's one of their site monitor.
Oh, okay, because like every single one is Walter.
I was thinking, like, who is this Walter Stapleton?
Busy guy.
Yeah.
The site monitor.
Fairfield,
does
you
the-
has his guy. I'm like, everybody.
I think
So
that-
sometimes it'll say William Kenny Associates.
Thank you. The movie name they use, Walter Smith.
I'm like, that's a like secret CIA job.
Walter's still doing it.
Where we at? Roman 8, legal enforcement action. Number 1, continued. Benitez, 666 Sturgis Highway, map 249, lot 21. Failure to address NOV dated July 5th, 2022 for tree cutting and clearing in a regulated area without a permit. What's going on with that?
Update, he has submitted his application for certificate. It is paid. I have a call with him at 9 AM tomorrow. And it is moving forward, so resolution in progress.
Oh, continue it to the next one on our agenda. Number 2, Blanco, 144 Bennett Street, 26, lot 166. Significant activities without a permit, including deposition of material within a regulated area, watercourse, and disturbance of the natural and indigenous character of the land without sediment and erosion controls. Currently working with town special counsel to pursue legal enforcement actions. That one?
Update, I submitted in writing via email to the agency Litigation is pending.
Very good. Roman numeral 9, staff reports. Reports from the Conservation Department. A, CWC permit application received 4. B, notice of violations issued 0. C, bond release 14. Number 2, sidewalks for January. A, 447 Trapville Road. And B, Wakeman Road, bridge over Sasko Brook.
Have the available dates, Sundays mornings as, this coming Sunday, the 7th. Subsequent, dates are the 14th, 21st, and 28th.
How's this Sunday, folks?
Sundays are bad for me all month, away months of the month, so.
Oh, enjoy. If you're going somewhere fun.
Yeah.
14th is a long weekend, is a holiday weekend. Well, so might
Is it?
want to consider that for some of you.
Okay,
Is anybody going away that weekend? So then, but, no, well,
Sadly, I'm available.
the 7th is,
No, the 14th have not.
yeah, so let's leave it on the 7th. Yeah, this
Sunday.
Sunday. This Sunday.
It may snow.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Forecast is
Oh,
iffy.
yeah, that's right. No, even whether it's snow or rain, I don't enjoy it.
Right.
First,
US mail.
The 21st it is. Just in case people go away on the 14th. I don't begrudge anybody their vacation.
8 a.m.
Yeah,
Still work. Okay.
and you'll send it emails and stuff and what we
Yeah,
do
it's not
first.
gonna snow.
Right.
10 other. Nope.
No,
And
next.
Turn.
Mine isn't exactly vacation though. Why not celebrate my mother's
9:30.
80th birthday?
Wow, that's
I mean,
good.
there's. Way to go, Luke.